Welcome to the Speaking of Jazz podcast series with Manny Kellogg in association with Music Tribes Unite News. Now let's get started.
Well, good afternoon, jazz lovers. Welcome to the show once again. It's always a pleasure to come your way each week with different jazz vocalists, musicians, singers, and what have you. Welcome to the show. Speaking of jazz, I'm your host, Manny Kellogg, and each week I have a different guest coming your way. This week, I am very proud to have a gentleman I've been trying to nail down for a year. He is a fantastic vocalist. He's a piano player. He's an arranger. He's a writer, a recording artist. He's also a radio air personality for WPFW, and he's a mentor. And with that being said, I am going to get out of the way and gladly introduce my guest for this week, Mr. Aaron Myers II. How you doing, my friend? Let's talk.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. I'm honored you even thought about me.
Man, if you only knew. Before I go any further, first and foremost, I'd like to wish you a happy birthday, man. And,
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry I couldn't make your birthday, but Lord willing, I'll make the next one.
That's what I tell you. I pray another one comes back around. It was a good birthday. I've gotten to a place just to really surround myself just in gratitude because you're reminded of how many people just didn't make it.
Yes, yes.
And so I, before the parties and before anything of that nature, I'm just really grateful. Everything seems to have scaled down even more the older I've gotten. Beforehand, when I lived in Hollywood, I would always do these red carpet events and things of that nature. Team up with a nonprofit and huge type of deal and lights. And literally, I asked a friend of mine as midnight hit, I wanted to go down to MGM Casino. It took me enough money to lose. I said, how much I want to lose. And I'm okay with losing this amount of money. This is how much I'm going to lose today. And I gambled for a little while. I came home and rested. And this weekend, I went to the City Open. And this first time I got to see Venus play, Venus Williams.
Fantastic.
Excellent job. So it was a good time. Good experience.
I'm glad you had a good birthday, man. And, I've been knowing you for a good little while now, but I've never really had a chance to just sit with you one-on-one and kind of share some of your feelings and have you to express and talk about how you got started. So I'm going to jump right in here. Where are you from, Aaron? And how did you get started into the music where you are now?
I was born in Dallas, Texas, and I was raised in a place called Goodloe, Texas.
Okay.
Goodloe is a sharecropping community about 60 miles south of Dallas, 14 miles east. And my family has been in that area of Texas since about the 1850s. So we were slaves there.
Okay.
And so coming from such a small Black community, because Goodloe was predominantly Black community, outside of a white community, Kearns, but Goodloe is where I was raised, where our family church was. There was and remains to be, in my opinion, a different sense of pride as held for those who went to maybe all Black schools.
Yes.
And the way the products of those who went to all Black schools, the way they appreciate and celebrate arts, artistry, even academics, they try to support you the best they can.
Okay.
And so naturally in the church is where I got my first experience with playing music for an audience. But technically my first audience was home. I started playing the piano when I was 3.
Okay.
And my grandparents would have probably been considered everyone else's great grandparents. My grandmother had my mom at 40.
Really?
And so by the time I came around, like all of her contemporaries, you know, and I always remind people, my Uncle Mackey, my Uncle McKinley, who was my next door neighbor, was born in 1895. And that's who I remember. He's the first person to give me coffee was Uncle Mackey, you know. And I think of having, you know, I can see the figures in my head. Mr. Grant Robertson, born 1900. You know, my Uncle Jay, born 1904. Willie Mae was born 1904. Uncle Jay was born 1906. These are people who I knew and saw, usually on a daily basis. And when it came to music, the music that I was introduced to was not only gospel, but it was jazz pre-bebop.
Okay.
I did not get introduced to what I understood bebop or anything like that to know from a musical or even a vocal standpoint until I was, I think, a senior in high school. My mother brought me a Herbie Hancock tape. And she put that tape in the tape deck. I said, what is this? Because when you've been listening, you know, Jelly Roll Morton, you've been listening to Fats Waller, you've been listening to, you know, Louis Armstrong, and all of these, what are now considered obscure to a degree, figures in jazz. And when you listen, even the bands, swing bands, like Chick Webb and people of that nature, you know, I always remember listening like to Jack Teagarden on trombone, things of that nature.
Yes.
The vocal, even vocally, was not a heavy, jazz vocals were not a heavy situation pre-bebop until you got into the swing era. You heard a lot of Broadway songs that had been popularized. You heard those examples, and we, at that time, Time Life did condensed records, and on a record you'd have something that was the best of Dixieland, the best of this, that, and the other. And I would play those records from my grandparents' house. But when Mother introduced me to Herbie Hancock, it took all of my breath away, and immediately I felt defeated. I said, "There's no way I can do that." I said, "There's no way I can do this. This is not." She said, "You need to hear this." Because this is where jazz has gone. And Mom and her mom and everyone had me in a different era with jazz. So I like to think that I progressed with jazz just as jazz naturally progressed itself.
Okay.
Because I didn't start with Ella Fitzgerald and then go backward. I didn't start with Gregory Porter and go backward. I didn't start with Coltrane and go backwards. You know, I started with literally Jelly Roll Morton. The first jazz song I ever heard and the jazz record ever played was Louis Armstrong's Gut Bucket Blues. That was the first one ever listened to or played. And so I went there and started going forward. And so now I've been able to, you know, I relocated to DC because I've been here for almost 15 years because of how DC treats its Black people.
Okay.
And how Black people feel. I like being Black in this town. I've lived in Los Angeles. I've been in New York, been in Florida, of course, from Texas, Georgia. I like being Black here. And I feel that you get to choose your home. You can't choose where you're from. You have nothing to do with where your roots were. You had nothing to do with that.
Right.
But where you end up, you can have some decision in that. And so I decided that DC would be it. And it's embraced me. And I like the brand of jazz we have here, which is very much so world in a sense. We are intergenerationally connected. We are interregionally connected, internationally connected in a sense. And the players who play here are influenced by their world travels, and they bring that influence right back here to the scene.
Right back here, yes.
Exactly. So that's how I got to where I'm at now, in a sense.
Well, can you, I guess, some of those names that you mentioned, Jelly Roll, Louis Armstrong, I guess you can probably say some of those were your influences?
Oh, absolutely. Louis Armstrong was probably one of my strongest stage presence. It's not very often when you can say someone lives music. When someone sings or plays from their lived experience. And what we know jazz to be today is solely, and I will say solely, because of Louis Armstrong.
Now,
without Louis Armstrong, you would not have what we know jazz to be right now, period, ever.
I'm going to ask you to hold on to that one right there for a minute, because as we get down into the show, I'm going to ask you that question later on.
I got you. I appreciate you.
Yeah. But we're thinking alike, Doc.
Exactly. But no, Louis Armstrong was an inspiration. James Cleveland was a huge inspiration for me from a gospel standpoint. James Cleveland was, we think of, young people now would think of Kirk Franklin, or they'll think of things, but James Cleveland, people, you would not have gospel today.
If it were not for James Cleveland.
James Cleveland, Thomas A. Dorsey in his space, of course. Thomas A. Dorsey is another influence. I would say that was, I guess, that a person that influenced me. And I have to say those names because those were the names that were the favorites of the people who raised me and what I was exposed to. And I think we forget about the influence of television. All those theme songs, all of the music, even for commercials, you would listen to would be these fantastic jazz bands playing nothing but jazz. Yeah. For bed music, for all of those things, ranging from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood from starting there to everything, So I would listen to, you want to hear a good, a big band, swing band with a Latin flavor is the I Love Lucy theme song. You listen to I Love Lucy theme song. That is a swinging piece of music right there.
To this very day. To this very day. I love that theme song.
Yes. So we think of, I was influenced by television, by James Cleveland, by Louis Armstrong. And then as I grew older and started to search out, other people began to influence me as well. A lot of women as well. So, that's where my influences somewhat come from.
Well, you've heard me speak before, and I'm always talking about the Trinity, which is gospel, blues, and jazz. Now, we've talked about your gospel starting. Let's talk about where do you get your blues influence from? Because it comes from jazz. It comes from gospel.
Ethel Waters.
Okay.
Ethel Waters, big time. Ethel Waters, you listen to what we know to be jazz vocalese in a sense, where you would take a solo of some sort and put some words on top of it. But Ethel Waters was one of the first women you would see emulating an instrument, and I would say with her voice in a sense. Highest paid at one time was the highest paid entertainer in the country as well. Influenced Hollywood. All the greats that you ever saw in Hollywood, ranging from Fred Astaire, this, that, and the other, they got their musicians from her. And a lot of people realize that. Yeah, from Ethel Waters, right? Yeah. And of course, B.B. King. B.B. King, Lord have mercy. I think when we think of in Texas, and I'm kind of jumping ahead, when I think of the modern gospel male groups, the quartets that we think of now, today, I'm not going too much in history, but you can hear the influence of the guitar-led quartets, not the piano organ, but the guitar-led quartets. And, you can, what's her name? Pop Staples. He had
Mavis.
Her father.
Yes.
Had a little something to do with that too, with the group he had been with as well. However, you think of the influence that B.B. King had. You could take if B.B. King was alive and young and put him with a modern gospel quartet, the music would be the same.
If he had fit right in,
the music would be the exact same.
Yes,
and so his influence, at least for me, having a voice that transcended genre, meaning that I know I love the Lord, but I shouldn't like this song this much. This song feel real good. He's singing to me real good right now. I ought not to be liking this like I like this right now. And somebody who you wouldn't be mad hearing them singing gospel song if they needed to. That's where my blues, between Ethel Waters
and
B.B. King, that's where the blues part for me comes.
Can you imagine? You just touched on B.B. King singing "I love the Lord, He heard my cry."
Oh, easily, especially in the old call and response. Oh my goodness, easily. I can see him in that. I always think about the churches with the red carpet and the red seats.
Yes.
You know, the maroon carpet and maroon seats. You know, and or what we forget about in a lot of the Black churches, the carpet was only around the perimeter. Under the benches was wood floors.
Yes.
And without those drums, the heels of the women clicking and that making that kind of noise or whatever, it's just something. Yeah, exactly.
Well, you don't know nothing about that.
I know exactly about that. I remember growing up, there was this one preacher. He said, "Don't y'all bring them drums in my church."
That's right. I was raised up like that.
You don't bring them drums in here. So those women in that ground made that noise, that syncopation, and that beat for you. It's just an amazing thing to think about, that I had a privilege being raised. Had I been raised in Dallas, I would not have had this experience.
Right.
Had I been raised here in Washington, D.C., I would not have had this experience. I only had my experience because I was raised purely next to cotton fields in a very small, protected area, and that protection was only from the advancements of time. It was not the protection of racism. Racism was protected there.
Okay.
You know, that was protected there as well. So, like, I can't say that me being raised there was the easiest thing. Being, as I've gotten older, I realized music not only saved my life, but it saved the life of many people. You know what I mean?
Yes,
and,
yes.
I can't forget that.
In other words, you can't go forward without looking at from which you've come.
Sankofa, yes.
Yeah, yes. My people were from probably not far from there. My dad's people were from Tyler, Texas.
Oh, I got folks down there. Yes, Tyler ain't far.
So for this very day. And the thing is, I don't know anything about that side of the family, but I got to find out.
Please, you should know. So Tyler, where I'm from. So where I'm from is right on what they call the edge of East Texas. The Trinity River.
Okay.
Is the true definition of that you're going into East Texas. Why is that significant? This is cotton country. This is the side that truly was the South. Okay. You had Confederate armies down there. The man who owned my family was a captain in the Confederate Army. And I spoke to his descendants during the pandemic. I had a Zoom call. I did my research and talked to the descendants of the family that owned mine.
Amazing.
I wanted to have that moment and to have that conversation. But Tyler, Texas, and the Black people there are really close to Louisiana. The northern Shreveport, the Caddo Parish, Longview, all those areas.
Yes,
that whole area that's a group of Black people who are either the direct descendants of slaves, or their parents and grandparents migrated to that area after slavery.
Okay.
Get towards something.
Yeah, my dad's people, I don't know, like I just mentioned, I don't know anything about that side of the family, but there are only a handful of people that spell their name Kellough. Everybody else spells it with O double good. Mm-hmm. And I get the question all the time, are you a member of the Kellogg, the cereal family? I say, no, not at all. I don't even come close. Matter of fact, my name is an Irish name, so I can't even explain that. Again, probably because of a slave owner.
Yes. Our family, and this is really my mother's side. My father's side is from that same Caddo Parish, Shreveport area, Carthage area, which is right there on that cusp, that boundary. And my gentleman by the name I guess my great-great-great-great-grandfather testified here in 1880 in the Senate. Mm-hmm. My ancestors on record in the Senate, and they were talking about why Black people were leaving the South. They wanted to know, which was amazing, to know that my ancestors on record telling his story, and he even said he had bought about 500 acres of land, and the senator, asking, he said, well, how did you come about this acreage, this great acreage, coming from slavery? He said, I bought it 1 acre at a time. That's what I did.
Yeah.
And he said, if I only have to eat bread and drink water, I'll do that to ensure that my children get an education. Amen.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And so he, when I first moved to Washington, my first meeting was in the Senate. And to know that my ancestor had already kind of laid that path for me, and was walking with me, I felt that I was in an unfamiliar place, and my ancestor was guiding me around places that he probably had seen himself.
Yeah. So interesting.
Yeah.
Your interview was very powerful, man. Very, very powerful. And again, I just thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here on the show, man. I'm going to keep moving right along because I know you're busy, probably got other things to do. I know you got other things to do. Not probably, I know. Who are some of the artists that you have worked with and who you're working with now, Doc?
The first jazz, I was like, in relation to jazz, the first jazz artist I ever met was a gentleman by the name of Bobby Sparks Sr. Okay. And Bobby Sparks, the organist, the jazz organist that we all know, and he's played with everyone from Roy Hargrove to everybody. That's his father. And his father would pick me up in his red Cadillac and take me over to Bobby Sparks' house. Yeah. He said, you can do this, you can be this, I see this in you. You can be more than what you see around here. I don't want you to be discouraged. The first person I opened for was for John P. Key in 96, 97. I opened for him. I've opened for him twice, actually. And that was an awesome experience. I opened once for Fred Hammond from a gospel standpoint.
Yes.
Which has been great. I've worked with a plethora of just jazz artists over the years, both international. The recent thing I did was with a guy I think I mentioned to you from the Netherlands. His name is Peter Beets.
Yes.
And he's a Dutch pianist. He's considered their national treasure. And he has his reach, at 13 reach he has with his left hand is absolutely amazing, phenomenal. And of course, traveling internationally, doing shows in Russia, throughout the continent of Russia, and Lithuania. So I worked with some great artists. The last album I worked on, of course, I had Chris Funn on bass, Dana Hawkins, who's very right now celebrated drummer on drums, of course. And, Sam Prather with the Groove Orchestra. Sam, he's my MD. White guy named Steve Arnold, who's also a bassist, but he did my arranging for this record.
Okay.
It was Herb Scott, who was like my right-hand man. And Herb called me for we always say we ought not to just charge each other anything, because only thing we're doing is giving money back and forth. It's like, since I've known him, I've worked with her for 10 or 12 years, and it's like we've been exchanging the same $500 back and forth. That same $100 is not going in. We work on the same $500 we've had. You
give it to me, I give it to you.
It's all that's happened, right back and forth to each other.
Yeah.
So it's an awesome thing. I've worked with some fantastic artists. I've had opportunity to sing and play with some fun people over the years, and I'm looking forward to the next person I get a chance to work with. This next project, I have 2 projects that I'm working on now, and they're going to be absolutely fantastic.
Well, we're going to get to them in a few minutes.
Yeah,
man, because you thinking too much like me, man. I'm going to jump in here and take an identification break and get right back to you. I'd like to remind all of our jazz listeners that you're listening to Speaking of Jazz with me, Manny Kellogg, and I'm your host. I'm coming to you every week with brand new artists. I may have a vocalist, I may have a piano player, I may have a guitar player, I may have a saxophone player. You'll never know unless you tune in. Again, like Fats Waller said, one never knows, do one. So you got to tune in to know exactly who's going to be here. And if you'd like to be a guest on the show, don't hesitate to email me at speakingofjazz.guest@gmail.com. That's speakingofjazz.guest@gmail.com. And I'd like to try to thank right here the people that make this program possible. Daryl Craig Harris, Music Matters, Las Vegas, Nevada. And also Nigel J. Farmer, who is our publisher with Jazz Tribe News, and he's in France. And I'd like to thank those guys for making the show possible. So with that being said, I got to get right back into it. My man, you still there with us?
Absolutely. Ain't going nowhere.
All right. like a tree planted by the water.
That's right, baby. I should not be moved. I'm trying to tell you.
Hey, man, what are some of the funniest stories, man, that you can kind of share with us that you've encountered throughout your career that you can share now? We had those that we can't talk about.
That's right, we do. Some people remember I just did, you're asked to sing the national anthem different places as a vocalist. And I've done it, for the Wizards, Capitals, and, NBA games and stuff of that nature. But a friend of mine had asked me, he had been coming to some of my shows and he was retiring from the Navy, I believe. And he wanted me to come and sing at his retirement ceremony down in, I believe, Annapolis. So I said, all right, I don't mind doing that. And normally that is done a cappella, if you do it vocally. But the people who were running it said that they actually had a accompaniment that could go with me.
Okay.
So this is wonderful. I went down a day early, and the only problem was that there was no lead up. There was no intro. It would start straight on it.
Right on the letter. And
so I needed to know with the woman who was going to, start it, once she pressed the button, that I could be ahead. They'd be ready, to rock it out, knock it out.
She didn't give you a note or nothing, or no starting chord or nothing?
Well, not at all. So when she hit the button, she told me to go. She'd already hit it. And so when she told me to go, the music had started.
Oh.
And I was trying, and I couldn't hear the music. And so I was trying to sing without hearing the music, and I just did the best. I suffered through it. Once I got to the end, the rear admiral of the freaking Navy was the one giving the speech.
Yeah.
For my friend who'd been in the Navy a long time. He said, well, at least we know, unlike Beyonce, this was not a recording. This actually
happened. It was live.
In real life. I've never felt so embarrassed in my life to do that. I also remember from a church standpoint, I play Hammond B3 organ, and when you sit down, you never think about much. You just sit down. You don't ever check your bench. You don't check your chair much. And I scoot over and I got on the organ and I literally sat down. And as I was beginning to play the song, the bench gave way on me all completely. And I'm like this, trying to keep things together. And the choir is trying to keep their composure together. The preachers are looking behind them to see what's happening back there. The audience doesn't know what's happening. And I'm just trying to keep it going right there, just on the floor. Make it, that was a incident that was absolutely fantastic. But I think one of the strangest things that's happened, two things, both of these things have to do with Russia, because in some countries you go to play, it requires you to have a visa. And the visa is very specific on when you can get there and when you cannot. And I was scheduled to start my tour on a Wednesday. And it meant I was arriving on a Monday so I could have a day to get my body acclimated, in a sense, and then do some rehearsals before I did my first show. My first show, that tour, was at the Moscow International House of Music. Well, I got off the plane and it was a direct flight. So I didn't have a layover. I flew right from Dulles to Moscow. And that plane leaves on a Monday. So there's only one plane that goes to Moscow, at the time, at least. And so I got to go through security and customs. And the woman says, "It says here that you are to arrive on Wednesday. Your visa is live on Wednesday." So, well, no, my shows start on Wednesday. They booked my tickets and I didn't handle my booking, and I'm supposed to go and, rest and do my rehearsals. And they took me to a back room, a security, I'm alone, mind you. And they were speaking in Russian, and they were telling me, why did I choose to break the law?
Whoa.
They asked me. I said, excuse me. And English is hard. Their English were, very poor. Not even restaurant English. They were not even using. And I don't even know restaurant Russian, So it was a difficult time. And so finally they brought me this paper that they wanted me to sign. And they were telling me that I was being fined 5,000 rubles. And I told, by this time they grabbed a flight attendant who spoke English. And I told her, I said, I don't have that type of money. 5,000, she said, it's $50. And they just, said, oh, I think I can swing that.
Okay.
So I signed away, and they gave my passport to the pilot. And he walked me through the airport to the gate, and he watched me. And they flew me then to Lithuania, and then gave me my passport back. Really? And it was a terrible ordeal. So I flew back to Moscow 2 days later. And when I got there, they thought I was the best thing since sliced bread, as if nothing had ever happened.
Well, how did you find it performing there for the Russian people? Before this invasion, because I was there in Russia during the invasion. Okay. And when the invasion happened, that was a terrifying situation. Before the invasion, performing for the Russian people, the Russians view jazz as revolutionary music. So the people who were listening to jazz were those who had been sent into exile. These were the people who had thought. These are the people who embraced Western civilization and customs and ways. These are the people who would have supported the wall coming down. These are those who support democracy. That's who listens to jazz. And there's a lot of hope that goes with the Black jazz musician, as African Americans have fought continuously for the entirety of one's life for equality and justice, for equity, for fair chance. And so
performing this music, I was embraced. I mean, you're looking at sometimes a room of 800 people or 1,000 people, and it's mostly young people.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, there's not sometimes that many gray hairs in the audience. These are young people who know the music and they want to hear you, and they want to hear your expression of this music. You can be riding down the road and you can hear jazz artists played alongside Beyonce or played alongside other types of music. So jazz is very much so considered a popular sense of music there. Okay. And so that played very favorable for me as a jazz artist. During the invasion, it could have been my downfall, because they wanted someone who was going to stay and fight alongside them. Mm-hmm. They wanted someone who was going to stay. When I mentioned to my tour manager, who's Russian, I said, it's time for me to leave. And he said, you cannot leave. He said, you cannot leave. The Russian people love you. We love you. He wanted to use the tour to help unify. And I told him that was not my fight. I could not do that fight for you.
Yeah. And
I had to sneak out of the country without the assistance of my tour support.
Really?
I had to sneak out. I had to get it. Going into Russia this past time, the State Department and the United States government were very adamant. They stated that if you went, you needed to have an exit plan that did not involve the United States government. Mm. So you knew that you were going with some sense of, tension, mm-hmm. given the circumstances. But the hope always remained in good faith that President Putin would not invade Ukraine. That was always the hope that we needed to maintain and hold on to. And so I didn't go alone because, I did go by myself, but following me, John Scofield was coming. Samara Joy was coming. Kenny Garrett was coming. So I was the first of the wave.
Okay.
That was supposed to be going to Russia. Igor Bootman was having a festival. And so, we were under the impression that the politicians would do their thing. The rhetoric would happen, but then that the music would go on.
Yeah.
And so I had already done my first performance, and I was in a place called Tagliani when the invasion began. And when the invasion began, I had to do 3 more shows before I could get back to Moscow, where I would be able to fly home. Mm. When the invasion began, I was about 1 hour and 45 minutes by plane away from Moscow. And so when I got back to Moscow, I told my tour manager, I said, I think it's time for me to leave. He said, you cannot leave. The fighting is far from us. He said, the fighting is far from us. We'll be your personal bodyguards. And he said, if you do not look at the media, you'll realize that everything is in perfect order. He wanted me to go. He said, just stay with me 1 more week and go with me to a city called Ekaterinburg. And Ekaterinburg, coincidentally, is the same place Brittany Griner plays. This is where she's locked up right now. He said, go with me a week there. And then if there's a problem, we'll send you back. And I said, I couldn't. And I was upset because I did not factor into my exit plan that I would not have the support of my tour manager. And I didn't think that they would not understand and comprehend the danger that I was in as far as not being able to come back. And I'd gone out to dinner with a friend that Saturday night after the invasion. And he's an American. He said, well, if the SWIFT banking thing comes into action, then I'll have to leave too. He's speaking for himself. And we left there. We went around the corner to a bar. And going to the bar, I went upstairs to pay for my drinks, and my credit card would no longer work. Hmm. So that meant I had no access to my money. And so I went back to my hotel, and I got back to my hotel, and I began to look at some of the flights that I had on standby I was going to try to use And British Airways no longer flew to Moscow. Air France was they had not declared they weren't coming to Moscow, but Air France you couldn't get a ticket. And I called a friend here, Oren Levine, him and his wife, and I asked them, I said, what are you seeing on your screen? Because even as I was looking on the internet, my web browser looked different. They had already hacked my phone by this time. And so they found a ticket that would have taken me from Moscow on the next day, on that Sunday at 6 p.m. I would have had to fly from Moscow to Qatar. And I would stay in Qatar for 8 hours and then take a 15-hour flight back to the United States. And that's what I had to do. And when I told my tour manager that Sunday morning, I said, I think I need to get out of here. He said, no, stay, you're being hysterical. Don't pay attention to this. You are being outrageous. Other people are coming. You'll see that this is all blown out of proportion. And when I had stopped talking to him, I thought to myself, he knows where I live, where I'm at now. He knows the hotel I'm in. And so I lightened my load, and I only had 1,100 rubles on me. Only had 1,100 rubles on me. And the taxi to get to the airport was 10.50. So I got in a taxi. I went to the airport around noon and checked my PCR test, got all the things done that I needed to do. And I alerted my tour manager. I said, I'm leaving. I've got to go get out of here. And he said to me, let me come by your hotel and talk to you in person. Mm-hmm. And I told him, it's too late. I'm not there.
I'm gone.
And so that was the last time I got on that plane, and I'm not a good flyer. And I always tell people, it's not a lot of Black people. There's about 12 Black people in Russia all at one time. And 10 of us were in the airport on that Sunday.
trying to get home.
We know how to get home. You hear?
Yes,
and
we do.
We were all trying to get out of there. And when I touched down in Qatar, I got a call from a reporter in Chelyabinsk, that's also in Russia, who asked me, was it true that I was counseling all of my shows, the tour? And did it have anything to do with what they call the special operation? And I stated, no, my cancellation has to do with President Putin's unprovoked invasion into Ukraine, and that I no longer felt safe in a country where the president was so unpredictable.
Yes.
And because of that statement, I've been advised it's not wise for me to go back.
I would advise that too, Doc. I was in Russia one time, and I don't want to go back. And I was in St. Petersburg.
Oh, wow. That's supposed to be the liberal and nice place. Yeah.
I was treated very bad. And I would not want to go back there at all. And I'm not ashamed to say that. I was on a cruise ship, of course, but I was glad when the ship left. We were overnighting there, of course. But soon as I got back on the ship, I didn't get back off anymore at all. I just didn't. I'm like you. I did not feel comfortable with just the way that I was treated at the immigration desk. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I have never forgotten. I get nervous now when I think about it.
It stays with you.
Yeah,
it stays with you.
I've traveled all over the world. And that's the only place that I have not felt comfortable. Not felt comfortable. Hey man, what are you currently doing? Are you doing recording? You're doing shows? Are you planning any more tours? You want to talk about that briefly?
Yeah, I am. There is a Kingdom project that I'm working on, and it's a double album. It is gospel and it is jazz.
Okay.
And it is the unique thing about this Kingdom album is that I've done my Ancestry DNA, and I am collaborating with artists from each one of the countries that represent my Ancestry DNA. And so I'm learning and hearing from, I'm trying to immerse myself in some of the music from some of the countries that make up who I am. so that I can make this collaboration worthwhile. And then the gospel piece is just the celebration of who I am, in a sense. And so I'm working on that now. I am hoping there's two festivals I'm trying to get on to for 2023. It didn't work out for 2022. And you know as well as I know how COVID has really upended the planning portion of when you try to do festivals.
Yes.
But one is the North Sea. I'm trying to get on North Sea, and then the Jazz Festival in Istanbul, in Turkey.
Istanbul, my favorite place.
Oh, it's beautiful. I just had breakfast with the Turkish ambassador. Me, him, and his wife. For my birthday, actually. His wife and his wife invited me to come to their home for my birthday for breakfast.
Fantastic.
They said that she had told me, she said, you have never had a real breakfast until you've had a Turkish breakfast. And they gave me that Turkish coffee, and I was alert all day.
I know you were, and I know what you talk.
I tell you, I have never been so just alive. I'm like, man, a little bit, and it's not much. It's just a little bit of coffee, but it gets you together.
It's stronger than the Italian coffee.
I've never had Italian coffee.
The what am I trying to say? Senior moment. Espresso.
Oh, espresso. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Espresso. Yeah. It's definitely stronger than espresso.
I usually drink a triple espresso. And when I'm performing, I drink a triple espresso and chase it with Red Bull.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I know.
No wonder that you are here. Lord have mercy. Oh,
but I mean, after I get off stage at the end of the night, I go right to my room and go to sleep.
Really? I can't.
Like nothing is like I haven't had a taste of anything.
I drank the coffee out of, to be polite, I'm not a coffee drinker. I get the caffeine nerves real bad.
Yeah.
But that coffee was, I didn't have a chance to get caffeine nerves with that Turkish coffee. I mean, I was alive, and it kept me until evening. That it kept me on that high until evening. Sun was coming down, and I was just coming down with it. I said, Lord, man, and had we had Turkish coffee over here a little bit sooner, half these cats wouldn't have died from drugs because
there you go. I love that Turkish coffee. I spent matter of fact, we overnighted in Turkish. Matter of fact, I use all my symbols. I use Turkish symbols and everything from Istanbul's Turkish. And I love that coffee, man. I like you. I was alert all day long.
I tell you. Oh, man, it's amazing.
But I'm going to jump in here real quick and then do identification, and we'll get right back and try to sum up our little interview again. I'd like to thank you, man, for being with us, and stand by with me real quick. Again, I'd like to thank jazz listeners for listening to Speaking of Jazz with Manny Kellogg. I'm your host. Again, I come to you once a week, Speaking of Jazz, and I have brand new guests every week. The show is being brought to you by Daryl Craig Harris, Music Matters, Las Vegas, Nevada, and Nigel J. Farmer, Jazz Tribune News in France. And I'd like to thank those guys for backing me up and being supporters and sponsors of Speaking of Jazz. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, just email me at speakingofjazz.guest@gmail.com, speakingofjazz.guest@gmail.com. And with that being said, I'm going to get right back into my guest so we can finish up stuff. I know he's got to go get him some Turkish coffee. And, how you doing, man? You still with me?
I'm still with you. I'm still here.
That's a blessing, man. You like that tree planted by the water, man.
I'm trying to tell you.
What advice could you give up-and-coming young artists, vocalists, piano players, writers, arrangers? What advice could you give them to encourage them to keep their career going, or stay positive and not negative?
There's a few things I would say, and I've said it to many people, and I say it because it's what's grounded me. Once you decide this is what you're going to be doing, you must do it. You can do many things. I do many things. But once you decide jazz is what you're going to do, you have to own it.
Yes.
And own this is who you are. And understand that as you own who you are, know it is of no concern of yours with other people, how other people define you. You define what you do yourself. You decide the gigs you're going to do. You decide the music you're going to sing. This is something you must own.
Yes.
If you're going to be a jazz artist, if you're going to be a full-time artist, by any stretch of the imagination, when they call you for the gig and when they're putting the name up on that on the marquee, that's your name, and people are coming to see you. And you must remove yourself from the imposter syndrome. You are there. People have saved up. They could have been spending their money on other things, but they decided to take the time and the hard-earned treasure that they have earned to come and spend it and to invest in your talent. And they really don't care the crap you went through to get to the theater.
That's right.
Who didn't show up where and what they have come to entertain. And I want to remind those people who are getting ready to do this full time that the audience has so much faith in you that they've showed up.
That's right.
They are invested in having a good time and for you to do a fantastic job, for you to make a memorable experience that evening. So don't squander that opportunity. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing I tell people is that you may not experience the fame that you want to experience, and you may see other people who may possess less talent than you do in your lifetime, and you got to be okay with that. It's not a defeatist attitude, it's not a giving up attitude, but you've got to know that you may not be a household name by the time you check out of here, because you've done what you love doing, and you've got to be okay with that, because you've got to be okay with doing this because you love doing this. And this is what you're doing, and this is your purpose. Whether or not anybody knows your name, you've got to be okay with this is why I'm doing this, because I love it. Now, there's a financial aspect, and we could go into, investments and how to plan and how to, that's one thing. But the most important thing to know is that you may not experience the beauty of the riches of your art in your lifetime. It might be just purely a legacy thing. And you got to be okay with it. It does not determine your worth. It doesn't determine your value.
Right.
But if you are literally doing what you love to do and you're walking in your purpose, you are the richest man or woman walking the earth.
Speak, doctor, speak.
And so people ask me, I consider myself very fortunate to do what I do for a living, to do what I do. I'm on the board of directors of 4 or 5 other nonprofits. My art has been able to help give me the ability and network to help others. One of my nonprofits, the president and CEO, had to step down. I stepped in as president and CEO, and being able to use the artistic work that I've used to be able to help the organization through this transition period. I have an opportunity to speak with those who write policy, and I meet with ambassadors, I meet with Congress people, and I meet with council members. And I even had a person from the Australian Parliament come and visit me here in my office to learn music policy and how, as a musician, we've been able to do what we've been able to do here in this area.
Sure.
I am blessed. I'm happy. I'm alive. I have a reasonably good health. So I'm like, I am cool. And I am very fortunate to know what the Lord has called me to do.
Yes.
Walking in that particular purpose and not still searching and trying to find. For right now, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and it feels good.
And you're having a good time doing it.
Yeah. I'd encourage all young people to figure out what that is and not try to do what you see other people have done. You'll never be Charlie Parker. You'll never be
Art Blakey.
You'll never be because they live their own life and they had their own challenges.
That's right.
And you particularly may not want what they had to deal with. To get you hear celebratory moments. You get a chance to hear snippets of solos and, oh, this was just wonderful, but you don't know what all came with that.
To get to that point.
Yeah. Appreciate their music, but seek to be your own person.
Yes, yes.
Sing your own song, you know, and I think you'll be the better for it. You can do it if you want to.
Sky's the limit.
That's right.
Like you said, if you want to.
If you want to. If you want to do it. And if you don't, you'll find a way not to. I guarantee it.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so there's a lot of stuff come up, and I get called for it. You know, I don't want to do that. I think I feel my head hurting. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You can always find a way if you want. If you don't want to do it, but now if you want to do it, you cannot find a way not to do it.
That's right.
It works both ways.
That's
hey man,
right.
while we're in that vein, we're down to our last question here. I'm cutting you loose, man.
Okay.
Again, I thank you. What is jazz to Aaron Myers?
What is jazz to Aaron Myers? Jazz to Aaron Myers is a lifeline. For me, jazz is a lifeline. It's the language I most understand. It's the feeling that most makes sense. Jazz is my life. Jazz is my lifeline. I don't sing to my equity. I sing to what I like.
Okay.
And I love it. I like it. There's nothing better than you hearing the first 8 count of a song. And either if I'm hearing it with the band behind me or if I'm hearing it with the band in front of me. In my most anxious moments, I can listen to jazz and I'm realigned real quickly. I love this music. I love the community. I love our history.
Yes.
And I love how much jazz has poured into other things. Jazz is a lifeline. Without jazz, you would not have so many other great things that we have in this world.
It's very true. And
to know that you're part of that family is just, it's a giver of life. Jazz for me, jazz for Aaron Myers is a lifeline. I love it.
Well said, man. Well said. I don't think it could have been. As a matter of fact, on all my guests, and I've had over 20 guests so far, and that's the way I end the show. Ask them, what is jazz to them? And I think this is about the best way it's been put so far. And I thank you for being my guest today, man. You know, and I want to jump in here again and say I want to thank the listeners for listening to Speaking of Jazz with me, Manny Kellogg, every week. Thank you so much for listening. And you can hear Speaking of Jazz on all your podcast platforms, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and all of the podcast platforms. And the show is being brought to you by Music Matters with Daryl Chris Harris in Las Vegas, Nevada, and Nigel J. Farmer, Jazz Tribe News, and friends. And I just want to thank those guys for making this show possible. They are some fantastic people. And I want to thank my good friend, and I say that, my dear good friend and brother. Thank you, man, for taking time out of your busy schedule to sit down with me and give me the last 45, 50 minutes of your time. It means a lot to me. I think this has really connected us even more, you know.
I agree.
And if there's anything where you see that you might need me on or can use me on, don't hesitate to call. I'll be glad to answer the call anytime. Again, I want to thank Aaron Myers for being with me. I love you, man.
I love you too, brother. I appreciate you all. I'll tell the audience, go to aaron2.me. You can check out all the good stuff. Aaron2.me.
Aaron2.me. You heard it from his mouth himself. Hey, man, thank you so much. And like I say all the time, man, God bless your heart, man.
God bless you.
Keep swinging, brother.
Thank you, sir.
All right, God bless. Talk to you another time.
All right, then.
We hope you enjoyed the show and thank you for keeping jazz alive. Don't forget to follow us on our social media channels, and all the links are in the podcast description. That's it for now.